We might have one of the creepier intros of just about any show that I've seen. Like, I wouldn't want to see that. I wouldn't want to see that if I didn't know us.
Welcome back, everybody. Right? Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Comics Della Morte. I'm your co-host, Crimson Owl Comics. There's my other co-host, Fogbreaker Studios, Jason Alexander, and our guest on the show today, Geo Brawn IV. How you doing, sir? And thank you for coming on.
Thank you guys for having me. It's really great to be on.
Awesome.
Doing great.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So before we get into like your artwork and your books and everything, tell everybody like how did you start off like as a kid where you're drawing and writing and where you wanted to actually do what you're doing now?
Well, what's so funny for me, when I was a kid, I grew up in a neighborhood that had mainly adults, older people. So I didn't have any kids around me, even except when I went to school. So I leave school and then I wasn't allowed to really travel a lot. So I got used to being home, and my friends became the monsters that I saw on the 4 channels of television we had. I mean, this was before there was cable TV. So I know it's you can't even fathom having just 4 channels to watch, but my that's all I had. I didn't have cable. Yeah. So it was like watching, my friends became Godzilla and Frankenstein and the Wolfman and Dracula. And, as time went on, the other monsters, Freddy, Jason, and I just loved it. And so I wanted to emulate that in my work and my art. And I was a kid. So what are kids going to draw? They're going to draw stuff that's going to weird out their parents.
Yeah.
So that's where basically it
began. What's up, Gary?
Yeah.
How's it going, Gary?
What's up? So I really enjoyed doing that,
One of the things I love about horror is the fact that you do get to like push those limits, and you do get to like make people say like you wrote this, like you damn right I wrote it, like
or you drew
that's
this?
The best. Yeah.
Man. One of the best things that can happen to you as a creator is when people read your stuff, they get used to you doing your stuff, and then they ask what the character is doing next. And like it's a person like, oh, have you talked to so and so? Have you seen them lately? That whole thing. It's almost like the character's real for them. And it's like the biggest compliment is something
you got
like
them right. Exactly.
Yeah. So it feels great.
So when you watch these characters, did you start drawing the character, like practice drawing, or did you start writing first? Because some people, they like to draw or write first, depending on how they were as a kid.
I started to really draw them because that was always my first passion. Drawing for me was a way to branch out and to really say things that I was a shy kid. So I really couldn't say a lot. I wasn't the kind of kid who was going to put himself out there, if you will.
Yeah.
For me, I wanted the art to be on stage. So, and kids would dig it. So it was like, I draw a werewolf, a monster, a vampire, and they'd be kind of like, oh, it's the guy who draws. And that went all through my schooling years, all the way to high school. I was pretty much a ghost, but my art was there and people knew me by my art. Yeah. So that's kind of where that kind of went for me. And I just kept on getting better and better at doing it. Even special effects. I used to love Halloween. And I started getting to the whole process of makeup art and latex and stuff. Awesome. So that was a lot of fun for me. And then people knew every Halloween I was going to come as something crazy or weird or bloody or messy. And I didn't care what. It may take me 45 minutes to peel it off, but I didn't care because I was going to put this whole apparatus on. It was
worth it. Yeah.
Yeah, totally worth it. Totally worth it. And I love doing it,
And then you got used to like, okay, do not put makeup behind the ears because it's so hard to get off.
Yes. And you learn as the process goes on and on. You get better at learning. Oh yeah, maybe not on the eyebrows. Yeah, that's gonna hurt when you pull that off. So yeah, but I love just the genre of horror itself. It's a passion for me. It led me to actually become a creator because I wanted to show my stuff, and that was the only way I knew how to do it. So,
well, yeah, like we talked about before we went on the show. That people do like the Marvel way, where they'll draw the image and then add the words. Horror is such a great thing that you don't need to have a lot of words, especially if you're having a chase scene.
It's true.
So So yeah, like you talked about, how, like, when you're writing your story, do you at least write like a brief summary, or is it all in your head and you just draw?
It's mostly all in my head. Is the first three stories were definitely in my head, and then for the fourth book that I was creating, I wanted to challenge myself. I wanted to do it differently, so I actually wrote it out, the entire story that was in my head. That way,
Look
I
who
just
it is. It's Jim.
what's that?
It's Jim.
Oh, hey
He's in the.
Jim, what's up,
What's up?
bud? That's awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was really kind of like that. I really wanted to see if I could do it that way, and I did,
Awesome.
and it was cool, and it was fine. But these stories have been in my head for years, even before I ever brought them out of my head. For me, it was just kind of like, how am I going to do it? What do I do? And then over the course of time, it's how do I do it better and better and better? So you just keep on evolving, and then you just build on that. I used to actually draw them out on paper and then scan the pages in and then, put them in Photoshop, and such a process. But now I'm just, I have the Wacom bamboo tablet. I'm drawing directly on, I see the screen here. It's a, big monitor, and it's like, yeah, this is a lot better. Over the course of years, you just evolve like everything, So It's a
Awesome.
lot of fun to do that. And then writing the stuff that I do, the words are there, but the important thing is seeing the imagery come to life. So for
Yeah.
me, that's the thing. It's like, if I can tell the story with just the images, then I'm doing it right. If it's forced or makes kind of a weird, not really making sense, something's wrong, and I got to revamp it a bit or add something to it to make sense. But then the words come afterwards at the end.
Yep.
And with horror, it's so fun to draw with. Oh, go ahead, Jason. I'll let you.
Oh no, you're good. You're good.
I was gonna say, with horror, it's so fun to draw with because most of the time when you want to have that jump scare, it has to take up most of the panel.
Oh,
So,
absolutely.
you don't have to like be afraid of working in such a small space.
Right. You actually, and that's the thing too. You're the director, right?
Mhm.
I mean, you're the ones who put it on there, so you can do it however you like, but you want to get that real emotion to come to life, and that's the beauty of it. That's the fun of it,
Yeah. And a jump scare in like a still picture, like what you do, or like what comic creators do, is it's written in reverse, because it's like a jump scare in the motion picture is kind of like a flash bomb, right? But to pull it off in a comic, you almost have to keep somebody's eyes on the page long enough to find all the really scary stuff. So
like Uzumaki.
Exactly like Uzumaki. Exactly like that. Like totally. There's just so many twisted things to see, and I think I guess that's how we do a jump scare with the visuals.
It's in that there's a build up to it too. It's like you get to the reader so involved that they can't look away, and then you just give it to them.
Give it to them.
I love it. It's one of my favorite things to do in books. I mean, especially with I do a lot of fantasy books now with my new series, but the original 3 books I did, the Untold Chronicles, I love a good jump scare because I had monsters, I had vampires, werewolves coming out of the shadows. It's that attack, that moment of attack that when is it going to happen? And all of a sudden you just see the eyes behind the victim. It's like they're dead. So cool. They're dead.
And so with the untold stories, like I gave a brief summary in the description, but talk a little bit more about like those stories in total. Like, what exactly are they about?
So the Untold Chronicles are a group of stories that really were in my head for years. And the first story for me was about a fallen angel who had to learn how to be human, and then had to learn how to be an angel again. But he also has postpartum. He's got PTSD from the war in heaven. He's kind of a mess because he doesn't know how to handle it as a human. War is war, and it's like, what do you do after the fact? So, and in a human body, he now has to feel all those emotions and that pain. That was the original first story, but Yeah. And then I ended up one night, I put in for this contest through Platinum Studios, and they were trying to get the top 50 in the world. And I had one too many beers, and I put myself in for the contest. So I said, sure, why not? That's going to be great. So I did, and then they called me back 2 weeks later, and they said, hey, you made the top 50. We want you to come out to Comic-Con, in LA, San Diego.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we're going to pay for it. Rock on. You're going to give your pitch to the producer of the Shrek movies, to Turk from Scrubs, and the CEO of the company. And I'm like,
man.
Cool. All right. So I did that, and they had 50 people there from all over the world. I mean, I was talking to a guy from Australia. There was a girl over here from France. They weren't kidding. And they give you like about $1,000 to, to come down. And I only lived in LA. So it was like, you're giving me $1,000 to come to San Diego. I'm gonna. So it was great.
You got that right.
Yeah. And so it was really fun. The story that they picked was actually called Everdance. And it was this vampire who didn't know how to be a vampire. She was sired by a vampire in the 70s who found her, and he saw something in her because he could read her mind. She was different. She was not a punk. She just was there because that's the only world she knew. That's what you did. You were kind of a rowdy kid in that neighborhood.
Right.
So he changed her around, and he picked her up out of that, and he made her a vampire. But he loved the innocence of her. He loved that she wasn't like a punk. She was just a normal girl who's pretending. And he wanted to keep her as human as possible. So she never learned how to be a vampire. But then one morning, he never comes home. And he was the reason she would be feeding. So he would kill. He'd go out and find a victim, kill them, and she would feed off of the blood from him.
Oh,
but then what do you do when he's gone? So she started to wilt, is the best way I could put it, because you start to kind of like decay if you don't eat.
Mm-hmm.
And but then she got this bright idea because she was reading a paper, and it was about this terrible, the crime rate going up. So she decided she's going to take out bad guys, and that's how she's
awesome.
But she's doing it really poorly, and what she doesn't know is she's being watched. What she's being watched by is the world's first demon named Lilith, and who happens to be her husband's mom.
Okay.
And so she made vampires, and so she knew who this girl was. She knew who the husband was because that's her son. And
it's pretty badass. I like this.
Oh yeah,
so
the artwork is great.
Oh, thank you. So she teaches her how to be a killer and how to do it without getting caught. She even gets her a costume and everything. There's a whole vampire underground. So she has a costume made. The costume is made. It's bicarbonate, basically, where if you get shot, even if you aren't paying attention, you get shot, it's not going to leave that bad of a mark. And she has guards on her arms, so she becomes kind of a vampire vigilante, and she starts killing bad guys, and she can read minds, so she knows what people are up to, and that's the first story. Her learning how to become kind of a woman-child vampire who's innocent, doesn't know how to kill, but then eventually becomes this killer, and how she reflects on that, considering she's not a killer, in her heart. How do I reconcile with this? How do I deal with this? How do I deal with this demon who now has made me what I am today?
Yeah.
And how do I not get caught by the cops? Because it turns out there's a cop who kind of fancies her in the process.
Yeah, I like that front cover. That's a nice cover.
Yeah. Thank you. So that's Kate, and then above there is Lilith, and that was my first book that I put out there, and I realized that there was a market for it. It was very empowered, very I wanted to have kind of a feel of Buffy, which was very popular when I was doing it.
Man, what happened?
Uh-oh.
Can you click them in?
Oh.
My mouse is really messed up today.
All right.
All right.
You're back. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, I just wanted it to be very empowering. And then over the course of time, I said, well, okay, I did the first book. I want to do another one. But what am I going to do? I mean, what story do I tell? Well, I told the story about those who actually, why her husband never came home. How did that happen? And I tell the story of the monsters who are watching over us, that take care of us. And as humans, they basically watch over mankind. And they're called blood rights.
Okay.
And sure enough, these are the characters that killed her husband. But now we're hearing their side of the story. What's going on with them? How did this happen? And there's all kinds of little twists along the way of who the backgrounds of these people are, what they were before they were this team of monsters. And generally made up of female characters. So I really I took that empowered vibe and I gave it steroids. And now instead of one empowered female, we have a bunch of empowered females all working together to basically control the doings of bad monsters, because there's awesome gradations, there's levels of bad, and that's what they're trying to do is basically protect the human plane of existence from bad guys.
I dig it.
And then after that, it was like, oh, this is great. This is a lot of fun. But now what? And I ended up meeting George Romero. And
what?
Yeah, the godfather of zombies. I mean,
right.
And I grew up watching them, but I never wanted to do a zombie book. I never thought it was something I could do different. But then I met George Romero. I was in Vegas at a convention, and he was there. And it's like, how often are you going to get a chance?
Yeah, right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I walked up to him, and I brought one of my books with me, and I also brought a picture of him I did of him as a zombie. And I just sketched it out the night before. Here you go. Thank you for all that you do. He was the nicest guy in the world and the most humble guy you'd ever want to meet. I was like, oh my God, this guy's awesome. I got to do something to say thank you for being you.
And I'm not worthy. No.
Right. I almost bowed down. It was that good. And he was like just the sweetest guy. I mean, he was so nice that even his handler at the con, the person you go to in case you need something, he looked at the guy and he goes, is it okay if I take a picture with him? And the guy was like, you're George Romero. You could do whatever you want.
Right.
It's fine. And it was like, oh, okay, great. So we got up and took a picture and everything. And he was just the nicest guy. But it gave me that inspiration to say, I got to do something. I got to do something in that realm, because I want to say thank you, because you are a part of what I do as well. John Landis with American Werewolf in London, Tom Holland with Chucky and Fright Night. These are some of the things that really kind of inspired me, but so did George Romero going all the way back. I mean, one of my favorite horror movies of all time is Day of the Dead. And I just love the concept. I mean, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful horror movie. And I said, okay, so let me think of what I could do. I happened to be talking to a buddy of mine, Jim Lujan, and I was talking about doing something with zombies. I came up with the idea of a Southern zombie post-Civil War, but she's not your typical zombie because she's still around and it's set in the future. And it's like she works like a serial killer. She is cursed with rotting if she does not human flesh. She was cursed for a crime. It was black magic that was used to basically make her this monster. And she was already a monster of a human being. She was a terrible person. That's why she was cursed. But it came to the next level when now she has no choice. But her vanity is keeping her alive. And she works like a serial killer. So she's going out there. She meets a guy in a bar. She goes back to a hotel with this guy and she devours him. And she literally eats him down to just the bone.
So you've combined like a vampire story into a zombie story in a sense.
In a sense,
That's
yeah.
awesome.
That's pretty much how she works. Cool. And so she can go out in daytime and she has a nice house with a pool and she loves lounging and she's a very Southern girl. So I had a lot to work with that. I luckily had friends from the South. So I was like, okay, I need your input of how this person, would the person say it like this? Or would they say it, and kind of get a feel of how that mentality would be. And before too long, it kind of became the story of Rosabelle. And because I was talking to my buddy Jim at the time, sure enough, we were talking about, I'm like, yeah, I mean, I got to come up with an idea. The name Rosabelle's great, but it needs something more. And it's like, it's like Rosabelle and the constant state of death. And he goes, that's your title.
I love it.
I'm like, that's it. Yes. And he goes, dude, I dare you to make that the title. And sure enough, it became the third book. So
Yeah, we picked that as the thumbnail. I really like that. Just especially with when she was holding the wine glass and you see her zombie face, it gave me like that Tales of the Crypt vibe.
That's exactly what the vibe I was going for. Actually, all three books, the covers of those, the first one you showed was Everdance. That was the original cover design. At the 10-year mark, I redesigned all three books to have, instead of a Drew Struzan kind of feel of collage, I wanted something different. And I went with the Tales from the Crypt, classic horror look. And that's kind of each of the books, book 1, 2, and 3 on that. They all have that same feel and that same Tales from the Crypt opening.
That's awesome.
So yeah, those were the first 3 books. And with that third book, I ended up bridging the gap between the first book and the second book. Because like I said, it goes into the future. And then we find out what happened to the character of Kate from the first book of Everdance. And what happens to the characters from Blood Rights Next Gen. So I get to tell every story, all just basically put it all into one big bowed up present, that was a lot of fun for me. I really enjoyed that.
That's awesome.
And I go to HorrorCons. Yeah, no, I put them out to HorrorCons and I do them there, and I do live art. So people come up to me and I want to be a zombie. Okay, here you go. And there you go.
That's cool. And I know we Javier, he talked about it, and you did the anniversary for the covers, but with the first book, I know you talked about before we came on the show how your art has evolved over the years. Have you ever thought about going back and redoing the whole book for the first book?
I would if I had the time. I would definitely do that. And maybe once I'm done the original stories I wanted to do, I do want other stories. So I'm going to do other stories, little anthologies and stuff like that, all related in the same universe that I have here. Okay. But I might even actually do that. I've thought about that, going back to the first 2 books, especially. Rosabelle is good. I like the way that looks. She's definitely the right amount of sexy, and she's the right amount of evil. But in the first 2 books, I think that I could definitely tighten that up more, because I've over the years, you can't help it as a creator. If you're an artist, you can't help but evolve. It's going to happen.
Yeah, right.
And doing that, it's really kind of cool to be able to look back and go, oh, damn, I've come a long way. But at the same time, maybe I can go ahead and improve those original pages. I know they've done it with other things. I know that, Neil Gaiman's The Sandman. When that first came out in the early 80s, the colors were really, they were trying to do something very different. So the colors were really out there on all the characters of the book. And I know about 10 years ago, they went back over those original pages and recolored them to more of a gothy, dark feel instead of just colorful and bright, because literally you open up the book and the colors were really bright. Like they were trying to go with weird, creepy, but it just came out super bright. So they redid all the pages and took the original art, revamped the whole thing. And I'm like, wow, that's an undertaking. Because that series
also too, me knowing and everything, like if you're drawing a graphic novel that's 40 pages, starting from page 1 and going to almost 40, your work is going to grow so much just within that sort of time.
Absolutely. You're going to find new and better ways to do things, because you just are. That's the brilliance of evolution, is that it's going to just happen. You're not even going to see it coming. It's just going to all of a sudden, oh, well, that's a lot easier than how I normally do it, Right. And that's, like I said, when I first started off, I was sketching onto a piece of paper, scanning that in, putting it into Photoshop, doing all the things in Photoshop. And over the years, it's just gotten more and more progressive. Yeah. So I would never go back to the old ways, only because that took so long.
I bet.
And the original story was only 24 pages. I turned it into a 140-page graphic novel.
Wow.
So, you know, I added, initially it was just about a vampire who was going to try to not be a vampire her whole life, but it wasn't working. She was going to have to
Yep.
be a vampire. And that turned into, well, what if I throw in Lilith? And that just set it off. So when I go to cons and stuff, it's like you meet people who dress as the characters, and that
Oh,
just
that's
blows
awesome.
my mind. That's crazy. I mean,
I
because they
can't
like,
imagine.
man, I just like, holy crap, you're
That'd be
dressed
an
like
honor.
Cherry Bomb. You know, this character here on my arm, this is Cherry Bomb. She's really kind of the first character I came up with. And I mean, to see somebody actually dressed as her is like the next level of cool.
Oh
You
yeah.
know? And then every so often, I mean, when I did more conventions before COVID, I mean, you get to, the fan base starts to get really cool. You know, it's like, holy crap. And it's like, they'll hit me up on social media and be like, hey, is there somewhere I could send something to you? And I've gotten like cool fucking swag from people. I can't tell the
That's
way I can put it.
awesome.
It's just like here, someone made they were such a fan of Lilith and my design on Lilith. They made a statue. It's like a 3D
Oh my
model
God,
rendering.
that's awesome.
And I'm like, holy shit, you're kidding me. Like, you gave me Lilith. This is awesome. And it blew my mind. It's kind of the same pose as on the cover that you posted.
Yep.
They're just like, whoa, that's killer. You know, someone else had I don't know, they have these like realistic battle dolls or something. I don't know what it was, but he hits me up. He goes, dude, I read your book Everdance and I wanted to make this for you. And this is the character from Everdance.
Well, that's cool.
So, like, holy crap. I'm like, you really
That is
did make the
awesome.
character. Like, even the costume. How did you do like the costume, man? He's like, oh yeah, well, you know, it's all over the book. I'm like, geez, this is devotion. I'm like,
Right.
I can't do that. I mean, that's awesome that people are willing to go to that level. I mean, the cosplayers are the best, man, because I mean, purple contacts, fangs, airbrush to make herself look whiter. The girl had the long nails, the airbrush all over the skin, and the bustier. And I'm just like, I was blown away. I was like, oh my god! And
Yeah,
you know,
it's
luckily
it's something you created. Like,
That's amazing.
it's
you
so
know,
crazy to think about. It makes me giddy. That's so awesome.
and it's like, holy crap. And then before too long, it's like you find out they're local in the area. It's like, would you like to do this again? That's how I got comic cosplayers for my when I do cons. That's the beginning of that.
That's
So it
so
was like,
cool.
whoa, this is great. You want to do it again? Sure, okay. And then you're gonna come with me, and we're gonna do this, and you'll be the character. And that was it. They loved it. So I did that for a good long time. It was
That's
great.
such an awesome feature of what we can do is now you've elevated somebody else doing their thing.
Yeah.
But it's really cool for everybody, and
Oh,
everybody
yeah.
wins. Like, that's
Oh,
so
yeah.
cool.
She was a makeup artist. She loved doing it, and this was like for her like the next level. Like, this is like, I get to do this. Are you kidding? And it's like, yeah, you get to do it. I get to bring a guest, so come on down. And you know, at one time I had 3 different cosplayers playing Cherry Bomb, Lilith, and Kate. And it was like, damn, okay, we are set. So I mean, and it was
way
You
great.
got your Charlie's Angels right there.
I did. I had Geo's Angels. It was awesome. It was awesome. And then, you know, I take them to events. I do art galleries. I would do paintings of the characters, and they'd be in like local art galleries and stuff. And sure enough, the girls would come with me. It was really cool. It was a great time.
That's awesome.
So yeah, man. And that all started from my love of monsters. I mean, it just builds. It builds and builds. And if you have a passion for it, you can go anywhere. You know. To this day, I still love the idea of making stories that talk about gods and monsters. I mean,
Nothing wrong with
sure,
that.
maybe, you know, threaten me with a good time.
Well,
know?
yeah, especially with like
Absolutely.
Lilith.
Yes.
You know, the whole like mother of vampires that's even been mentioned in like the old show Supernatural.
Right.
It's
They
so
had
fun taking a story that's actually out there and part of mythology and finding ways that you could add your own little twist to it.
absolutely, and that's the beauty of that story, especially because telling her tale, there's so much room to play with. There's
Right.
an entire its entire playground, because there's very little, and the Book of Enoch mentions her. That's it.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's like, well, let's see what else we could tell. And then before too long, it's like, well, okay, so we go into here and we go into her history of Babylon, her history of ancient Samaria. Luckily, I have a really good, I got an ancient historian on my side who, if I do it wrong, she will correct me. So
That's awesome.
It's really cool to be able to have that somebody who can do that and just like, okay, what about this? What about this? And before too long, okay, what about if I put the character of Ishtar, which is Lilith, but it also could be, depending on who you talk to, Inanna. Well, you got a duality here. Are they one person? Or are they two separate people? I mean, how does this work?
Are they connected? Are they connected at all?
Exactly. Yep. There we go. So I'm like, yeah, that's kind of how this plays out. We could go anywhere with that. The character of Inanna. Now this is I'm working on the 5th book, and now the story is about her and her rise as a god. She started off as a child who sees angels. She develops her entire evolution into godhood. I mean, and then her relationship to Lilith, and how they're kind of like these immortal sisters over time. And the idea of the dialogue between them. What do you talk to a demon goddess about? The weather? Right. I mean, where do you go with that? Right. That's the fun. Right. That's the beauty of having to put that all together. Yeah. I love it. I love it. I enjoy the hell out of it.
That's amazing. That's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Really dig the stories, and that's, like you said, there's just so much you could do with that. It's like, especially if they're immortal, it's like you could literally have them talk about, so what did you do the last 100 years before I seen you last?
Right. Well, and that's just it. It's like, and that's what I love to do too with Inanna and Lilith, because they're kind of that sister connection. Mm-hmm. I put them into the future, and what are they like in dystopian society? And what happened to Inanna's daughter, and how does Inanna's daughter play into the big part of all of this? And who is Inanna's father? What if I made Adam Inanna's father? So Adam is this immortal character that is related to Inanna, and the ex. So technically, Inanna is the stepdaughter of Lilith.
Yeah,
because Lilith is supposed to be Adam's first wife, and making an angel and a human together, putting that together, apparently is a bad idea.
Yeah.
So the idea of having these characters connect and then having them travel throughout time and travel throughout the books, that's a big part of it too, is you get to go back and tell the story, but then, that's this character from Everdance and this character from Blood Rights, and oh wow, they're in this story now. That you just keep on bringing, it's like meeting an old friend again. Like, this is good.
Right.
And that's awesome. Kind of the fun part about it. I love doing that. I love seeing it, which led me to doing it myself. So,
now
that's something that.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh,
go ahead.
I was gonna say,
no, go ahead.
It's cool, eternal characters, because they can completely flip-flop sides.
Oh, sure.
In a very gradual way. Like, who is the most evil now could have been the most benevolent for thousands of years until something happened. And now what happened? What happened when these characters were together last?
Exactly. And that's the thing. I mean, the idea of Lilith, I play her off as kind of a rock star. Doesn't care about much. There's not much to care about. You're immortal. There's nothing that could hurt you. There's nothing that could change your world. You're just here. You can do whatever. So what do? The worst thing you can do is get bored. And so she does everything she can to not get bored. And her relationship to Inanna, to Kate in the first book, and even Blood Rights, the characters of Blood Rights, they all know who she is. So she's this immortal rock star with the rock star personality that doesn't care about much. Again, what is there to care about? I got everything I need. Gold jewels don't really mean much to me, because I could melt them in my hands if I want to do it. What do I care? What means the most when you're immortal? What do you do with eternity? What part do you play in the big picture? I guess so. that was a big thing for me. How do these characters not only relate to each other, but sometimes they're good, like you said, Jason. Sometimes they're good. Sometimes they're gradations. You know, sometimes
Right.
they're something even more evil, and they have to be sort of good to stop it.
Like wrestling.
But that's
Like wrestling.
It's just like wrestling. It's just like
You know,
wrestling.
You're a heel, and then all of a sudden you become a face.
Yes,
Yep.
we were talking about this earlier. It was the idea is the heel, when they do that one thing that makes you go, oh, whoa, he just
remember when Undertaker rescued Macho Man? It was like he stopped him from getting hit with a chair, and it was the Undertaker, and it was like all bets was off then.
Anything could happen, and that's the beauty of it. When you can make people like just whoa, like that is cool. You know, like I can't believe that just happened. It's one of the coolest things in the world to do, man. You're really driving that bus. You know.
That's 1000%. It's just like when somebody pauses or gasps at something you're writing, it's like, okay, now I got you. Like, come on, like now we gotta go. You know,
you got that hook, man. You got that hook, and it's like,
or even if you don't have like that gasp, where you, especially with horror comics, or even with shows where you grow such a great, like, a character falls in love with another character and then you just completely kill them all.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's a great achievement if you could get people to feel that way.
Yes, absolutely. Walking Dead's been doing it for like a decade now.
Yeah,
it's like every time you bring a character in that's really cool and then they kill him, I'm like, oh man. Another one every time, man. They get me every time. I really like that guy. I really like him. And now he's
Stranger Things.
Yeah. Stranger Things is another one too, because I mean, you know, who wanted to see Eddie die? Come on. But you know, spoiler alert. Sorry for those who haven't. But, you know,
it's too late.
Too late.
Right.
Too late.
All right.
Too late.
You've missed that point. You got to get into it.
Right.
So, but no, it's really hard to, and I love when I can do that. I have had people like I've had to kill characters, and then I get told by a fan, dude, why'd you have to kill her? Like, you know, it's like I know, but there need to be, you know, the story arc here, and no, but you killed her, man. That was hard. I'm like, wow, didn't realize you were that passionate. Okay, well, there we are. So it was really cool to be able to do that with those stories and to bring them into the new series I'm doing now. So the Untold Chronicles was my first series. Now I'm doing the Angel Codex, which brings in a lot of the horror characters into this other realm because they were demons and monsters and everything else. It's all one big universe for me. It's the Geoverse. Awesome. So I have a really good time.
I can't wait to experience your universe a little bit more. Like,
thank you.
We've had such a fun run of storytellers. Like everybody that's been on our show has done it in some capacity. Like, and we've read a lot of different stuff, but the indie stuff is like, this is where we belong. Like, this is because
indie horror.
It's all we really ever do. And the other day, somebody posted something from Twitter where somebody said something about crowning Jordan Peele as the best horror director of all time. And Jordan Peele says, I will not listen to any more slander about John Carpenter. And I'm like, if you do it, you get it.
Yeah.
And if you get it, you know, it's just we're all just trying to do the same thing.
Absolutely.
Like we're all just we're all chasing the same dragon.
Correct.
But in that, like, we all add, like, we're building the monster that we're chasing. And it just, it can make everybody so much better. Like, it's just, I'm very grateful to be telling stories in a time of storytellers.
You get to really raise the bar, you know, it's your opportunity to raise that bar. Yeah. And I agree. I read that story too. And I'm like, I see where people are going with that. But, you know, it's like the funnest part for me is to be able to see the icons that I grew up watching and be able to tell them sometimes face to face, thank you, you know, and if I'm not doing it face to face, literally, I'm doing it in my books. I'm doing, if I show a werewolf, the werewolf is actually the look of American Werewolf in London, because that's my favorite werewolf design. A vampire, Fright Night. My vampire kind of looks. I have 5
man,
realms.
I love Fright Night,
I
especially
know,
the
right?
first one.
Oh my god, the original. I mean, classic. And the look of the vampire really got to me, especially when she turns into the vampire. Sorry, another spoiler alert for those who haven't seen it from 30 years ago. But if you've seen that,
came out like 85, so it's about 37.
oh my god, that vampire freaks me the hell out every time. And I know it's coming. I know she's going to lift her head up, and it's going to be horrific. But it always gets me every time. I don't care how many times I've seen it. And I'm like, God, look at that. Look at the mouth. That's just brilliant. And so that inspired me to make one of my versions of vampires have that face. I love it. I love it. And because we're indie, we can do that. We can do anything we want with that. And I told Tom Holland that. And he's like, thanks. That's awesome. And he looked at it and he goes, that is the face. And it's just like, yeah, at that point I could really go home. I don't even need to be here anymore. I've just been told by this, I'm good. One of the best moments of my entire career, I was at a con called Monsterpalooza out here. And this is when it was in Burbank, when they first started up. And it's the art of monsters. So you have all these life-size statues, literally life-size statues of you name it. You're going to see everything from Edgar Allan Poe, life-size, standing there reading a book, to Michael Jackson's Thriller. I mean, you name it, it's going to be there. There was one really cool one where it was Michael Jackson's Thriller with the werewolf face, and he's sitting in the chair. So the dummy is sitting in the chair, and there is a life-size Rick Baker posed like he's putting the makeup on. And it's young Rick. I mean, I don't know if he was there that year, but I hope he was to see that, because that was just amazing. And it's like, awesome. Wow, look at that. Look at that. And it's just
Michael Jackson's makeup in that movie is, I feel like, underrated in the scope of horror in general. Like, absolutely, it was awesome. Like, Thriller was just.
And that was done by John Landis. He directed that and got Rick Baker involved and all the people from American Werewolf, because that's what Michael Jackson wanted. He saw the movie. He was like, I want that. Give me that.
That's it. Yeah.
And there you go.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't from American Werewolf, the zombie makeup from Thriller kind of used for like the way his friend was decomposing. They used some of that.
I think so. And it was just like, wow, look at this. Look at the feel of this. Mm-hmm. And that's the cool thing. It's like I said, one of the coolest things that ever happened to me was at that show, Monsterpalooza, because it's the art of monsters. And you'll have, like I said, all these amazing directors and people walking through. And then some people like you wouldn't even expect, like who was it? Jeff Dunham, the puppeteer guy. Comedian. Yeah, he was walking through one day. I'm like, it's like some weird dream. Like these, like how does this happen? Where does this guy all of a sudden just come into the picture? And he was the coolest guy. And Guillermo del Toro, I got to meet him a couple times.
Oh man.
Just walking through before the event even started. He was walking through with his kid, and he saw comic books, and he's like, "Oh, these are great. I love these." And his daughter was with him, and he's like, "Well, she was a little girl at the time." And he's like, "Oh, I can't look at these with her." Okay, I get it. And he goes, I'll be back. And I'm like, okay. I got to meet him for 2 seconds. Great enough. But sure enough, an hour later, he comes back by himself. He's like, you didn't think I was going to come back, did you? And it was like, holy crap. Yeah.
He's done such great stuff for horror.
And it was like, here's the book. Thank you. I can't just coming here. I just thank you. And it was the coolest thing in the world. A year later, I get to meet him again, and I have the new book, the second book, Blood Rights. And he had, at that point, he's swamped. People are literally, because they know he's there, all around him. He couldn't even get to the tables. He's just trying to get through the crowd now because they're swarming him. And I got up off my table because he just passed by. I went up. I go over to him with my second book, and I say, before I even get a word out, he goes, my friend, how are you? How are you doing? I'm great. So cool. I'm great. Hi. He goes, I love that first book. It was the best. Thank you. I'm like,
sorry. Yeah.
Right. I'm just like, yeah, he's just me. I give him the second book. I'm glad you liked it. Here's the second book. And he gives me this big bear hug. I bear hugged Guillermo del Toro.
That's awesome.
I can't beat that. I can't beat that. And sure enough, I find out after I gave him the second book, and he's, yeah, I'm sure you loved the first one. You probably never even had a chance to read it. No, he's got a photographic memory. I find out, and he has an entire library in his business offices. Well, it's basically a mansion down the block from where he lives. Okay, he's converted this mansion into his office studio with all the, you name it. And a lot of the stuff, like 400 items from this office home, was put on show, which was really cool. And it was just amazing. All these different artifacts and things, like it was literally like my office on steroids. Okay, it was insane. And sure enough, he took you to go through the office. You see the little tour, and up on the top of the stairs, up there in the mezzanine, he's got an entire library of books all across the way. And I'm like, my graphic novels may be in there, and just knowing that feels awesome.
That's
That'll make you snuggle up a little bit when you lay down at bed
right.
at night, You'll
sleep really good that night.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally.
So yeah, man. No, I dig this so much, because I get to tell these stories and get to really know some really cool people. Just the fans, man. The fans are the coolest. Like I said, the fact that people are going to take the time to make something like this for me, just because they know they looked online, they see, oh, he's got a pirate office, and look at all the strange things he has in there. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of weird things going on.
Yeah, right.
But and a lot of it, it's like I started learning how to make through COVID. I mean, I was really bored sitting home alone. So I was like, okay, well, what am I going to do? And I said, I saw so many monsters being made. Why can't I do that? Why can't I make a monster? And then I started making them, and I got various. I got a torso of Jack from American Werewolf in London over there. I got a character I saw once that I said I'm going to recreate that. I had one picture of him that he was at an event, and I'm like, oh, that's so cool, but I don't have $3,000, so I'm going to build him myself one day. And I had plenty of time during COVID, so I made him. He's over there. His name's Peanut. There's all kinds of things around that are just fun. That it's all just inspired. It's a part of the process of what I do. I can look around this room and just be like inspired, and I love that. You can't beat the inspiration that goes into being a creator.
I was going to say, Jim had a question.
Oh.
Top 3 horror directors of all time. Go.
Sorry. All right. So I would say John Landis, because he's generally comedy. If you can do comedy, then go back to horror. That's impressive. You can do both and make it funny and horrific, even better. So John Landis, I'm going to give props to. Guillermo del Toro, easily. And he's not even trying to do horror. He's just trying to tell a very good story. Yeah. And then I would say Tom Holland. Those would be my top 3.
Awesome.
All right.
What about you,
my
Jason?
My answer is kind of cheap, because I don't know a lot of horror directors yet. I'm learning. Ari Aster is somebody I really enjoy, but that's, to me, still very new, and that's different to me. But I remember as a kid always loving movies like Prince of Darkness. Like, that's probably my favorite horror movie of all time, and it's one of my sneak horror movies. I also remember how much I love They Live. But I also remember how much I loved the scary parts, for me anyway, of Big Trouble in Little China. Like, those were, and then I learned, like, those are all John Carpenter movies.
Yeah.
And then I see The Thing last year, and I'm like, okay, it's just John Carpenter. When I see my stories moving, I want to see it through John Carpenter's eyes. So love horror creators, but as far as directors go, John Carpenter was my favorite before I even really knew what my favorite was. And so,
and that's everybody how you really else,
know.
That's how you know.
Absolutely. He's like movie Stan Lee for me.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I've been to cons where he's been at, and he always says the same thing. He goes, my movies are remembered. He goes, but not when they first come out. He goes, in 20 years, People remember it.
I'd be okay
Yeah.
with that. Like I totally
You
would be
know,
okay with
yeah.
some of my stories making it to when my kids are my age now and people getting them. Like,
Like, do you know who your dad is? I mean,
right,
hi.
exactly.
That's a great feeling, especially if, you know, of course, the kid's going to be like, my dad wouldn't even let me have the car when I was 16. But you can't win.
Right.
But, you know, it's good stuff.
Yeah. I know me would definitely be John Carpenter, Del Toro, just because his version of Vampires with the Strain, I really enjoyed that show.
That was a great
really
show.
good. That was a
a
really
great
good show.
And that was one of my big things too, because I never missed that show, and it'd take forever for another season come out. I mean, that's what sucks about.
And then, like what he did with Hellboy was just so great.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
he did a really great job
taking,
with Hellboy.
yeah, like getting the horror elements in there with the comic book stuff,
But
and
making
then
it fun.
yeah,
It was
yeah, and then
very fun.
of course, you know, George, because what he's did with zombies, just
Yeah.
those. I mean, of course, I will go into the next question, like who's your favorite like 80s horror slasher? But like, you know, I love Wes Craven just because I'm a big Freddy fan, you know.
Right, right. Well, even
You know?
like for example, even with George Romero, I
Yeah.
mean, even beyond zombies, the
Mhm.
guy, you know, Creep Show,
Oh,
iconic.
Yeah.
fucking love Creep Show.
Yeah, I mean that was an iconic movie, and then with
The TV show is actually really good.
it is, it is. I I'm not a fan of the Creep, but I know they have to do something different because the idea of the Creep looks way too similar to the Crypt Keeper.
Yes, it does.
So I knew they had to do something different, and I know because it's Nicotero, it's gonna look like one of the zombies of The Walking Dead.
Mhm.
But I wish they could do something different. Just, you know, something. I don't know what that something would be, but I just wish they could do something.
But
I
I'm
think that's
glad that the
okay.
show. But I'm
It's-
glad that the show has like that comic elements to it,
Right,
like the movies
right.
did.
Right. And
Yeah. I think
you know,
I think it's okay to be ready for something different, even if you don't know what it is. I think that's totally fine. It's like, yeah, like
the show itself is great. I love the show because they get some great guest stars on there. And it's like people that you wouldn't even think. And then they get some of the classics on there, like Adrienne Barbeau. And she is just super awesome. I met Adrienne in Texas at a convention because I really wanted to present her. You ever see Cannonball Run?
Mm-hmm.
yep.
Yeah, she was in Cannonball Run with a sexy little, you know, outfit and everything.
Yeah.
I did a pinup of her as that, and I wanted to give it to her. I goes, you know what, this would make my day if I could do that. And then I did, and she was the superest. Like, you just couldn't ask for a nicer person. And I remember all the way back from Maud. I mean, way back, right? But she was here in Creep Show, and I'm like, wow, from Creep Show, you know. And then she did Creep Show, the TV show, and I was like, first episode, and I was like, whoa, this is so cool, you know. I love this. This is awesome stuff. And the stories.
We'll have to talk next about the pinups. Like, what was like with your pinups? Like, you done horror pinups, and you know, you did some really great work. Like, what was some of the best?
I'm actually messing with it right now.
Yeah, like what was some of the best pinups that you did, and the most challenging too? And when you gave them to those actresses, like what was your most favorite actress to like work with?
Definitely one of my favorites is Bring Stevens. I work with her she's a friend of mine at this point, because what was cool about that is the fact that she was married to Dave Stevens, who is the creator of The Rocketeer, and he was a huge illustrator of Betty Page when I was growing up, and when I was reaching that certain age of chicks are cool.
Yeah.
You know, Betty Page did it for me. I was like, wow, that is so cool. I like that. And wanting to emulate that was just like something important for me when I started doing pinups. And I've always loved pinups, but now doing them was like, oh, well, here's a whole nother realm, is actually doing it. But then I got to meet her, and she's the nicest person in the world. And we started to become friends. And much like he became friends with Betty Page back in the day, I became friends with her. And it's like I could take her to lunch, and this is so cool. And we can just hang out. And you're Bring Stevens though. You're like one of the scream queen goddesses, you know. And it's like, now let's see what we can do with your pinup. And then I've probably done close to, I want to say, 25 pinups of her, and she loves them. She put, you know, we've done conventions together. We've had tables together where it's just like, I'm sitting next to Brink Stevens. This is cool.
Yeah.
You know, she's one of my favorites.
If anybody doesn't know, she's from Slumber Party Massacre.
Slumber Party Massacre. She's been in so many horror movies. I mean, she has been in a lot. And she still does them to this day. Some of them are really fun. Blood Scarab, one of her most recent is one of my favorites. I like that one. But I mean, she's really cool. Deborah Dutch is really cool. I worked really close with Leanne Langford for a minute before she passed away, and she became a really good friend of mine. So it was really cool. Just some of these girls that I grew up watching on late night cable when mom didn't know I was watching them. And, you know, and it was like, wow, now I'm friends with them. And
trying to make sure you got your finger on the controller just to change the channel quick.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God, yeah. I had a blanket over me, over the TV and me, and I listened like a ninja. All right, just making sure that door doesn't open. We're good. We're good.
Yeah,
we're cool. We're cool. So, you know, and that was living in the 80s. So no, it was really cool to meet some of them. I've never had a bad experience. Like I said, Adrienne Barbeau, sweet as can be. And it's really hard to have a bad experience. I'm going to make you look like you looked 30 years ago at your sexiest, you know, and there you go. But I've been really lucky. Linnea Quigley, awesome. I've done some of Michelle Bauer. So it's all three of the major giant scream queens. But she's been retired for years, so I haven't ever got a chance to actually meet her. She's just come out of retirement doing conventions with Linnea and Brink because they had a good time doing them. So it'd be great to give her one of the ones I've done of her. I've done a lot of celebrities, a lot of horror celebrities. I love doing them. I love pinups. Like I said, kind of when I became of age, I grew up loving them, and then now I get to do them. So,
like I said, you should make a calendar. People buy that in a heartbeat.
I really would love to. Actually, I would love to. Actually, I have enough. Thanks to COVID again. Had plenty of time to sit there and make pinups. So I ended up making, I think to date, I have about 1,600 that I've done.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. And I started about a decade ago. So over the course of a decade, I know it kind of boggles my mind too.
On top of everything else, like that's a pretty
He's
strong
like, all I
output.
do is draw monsters and boobies.
That's pretty much my tagline in life. Yeah, it's how I roll. But it's kind of funny too because I've said that before. But, what do you do for a living? Oh, hi, I draw boobs. Damn. All right. Hanging out with this guy, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, I love it. I'm sorry. Did Jim have a question? Another question?
No, he was just talking about Jason's work.
Oh, so I was just loving, you know, the idea of wanting to do pinups. So, and like I said, they, you know, I mean, I've done all kinds of celebrities, you name it. I mean, some of my things have been political, some of my things have been horror, some of my things have been, you name it, anything that's enthralled me over the years, anything that's, you know, you just do it, and who's gonna stop it? Just you.
That's the beauty of creating and working for yourself. You know, is
boss.
There's nobody to run it by. You want to do it, knock it out.
Just do it. Yeah. I can't. I literally, like I said, I couldn't be happier with the cable company I worked for firing me. Well, they laid out like 600 people like that because recession came and they outsourced everybody. So everybody lost their job.
Yeah. And
I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew I wanted to do something I wanted to do instead of just another measly job that I'm going to hate. And then I just did it.
Yep.
You know,
I totally get that.
It was that leap of faith. And as a creator, you got to take those leaps of faith. And if you fall on your face, you're going to learn something from it. And that's just it. Keep doing what you love to do. You'll never work a day in your life. That's
Jason, Jim said, tell your current story. Geo will relate. or identify with?
Oh, which is this the one that I'm working on? The one I posted most recently that I'm working on is basically about being a young child and getting baptized to an organization, and like what that means and what that looks like for me at 40, when I committed to this at 12. And so I took that narrative and I blended the feeling into something scary, because that's really what it is. And so I'm like really committed to posting a little bit more online tonight. So if y'all bear with me for a little bit, like I'll pop it on my Instagram. I'll pop a few pages on my Instagram or a place to read them at here soon, because
That's awesome.
I'm very excited about this run of mini stories that I'm doing.
Nice.
Because I get to do it the way that I don't know, it's like I feel like Jack Chick is like my creepy relative from my past, because we did the same thing for different reasons. Like, and so just like how we all pay homage to the creators we love, in a sense, I'm paying homage to Jack Chick. Like, his books were very dark, but the message was supposed to be positive. And that was what I always was raised with. I'm writing very dark horror stories that are actually, for people who grew up like me, it's actually educational. And it doesn't mean just being a Jehovah's Witness. It means look out for these warning signs. If you've ever felt like this, you'll be able to read these stories and appreciate them.
I may have to do that. Jim knows me well. Jim. The reason Jim told you that is Jim knows me well. My first wife was Jehovah's Witness.
Oh, no way!
I still have mental scars. She was quite a character.
She was unbelievable. She was the
inspiration for Roosevelt, my zombie.
I totally understand it.
But no, So I feel you. I got mental scars that last to this day, man.
Unreal. Yeah, I'm sure you do. When people say, "Don't Jehovah's Witnesses just knock on doors?" No, that's all you see.
Yeah, that's all you see. My gosh. Yeah. Oh God, yeah.
Oh yeah, we should talk about that one. I would love to talk to you about that. I'm sure we have similar stories from different worlds.
We're gonna sit down and have a beer one day, and we're gonna talk.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you for that, Jim. I appreciate the flashbacks on that. Appreciate you, man.
Foggy's Therapy Sessions, Volume 1.
Right. Nice. Oh man.
So now we're past the hour mark, but want to just ask some simple questions.
Sure.
What is your favorite horror movie of all time, and why?
Oh my God. There's like so many to choose from, but one of them would be American Werewolf in London. Mainly because it is the perfect blend of horror and comedy, and it made you feel very modern in a very ancient curse way. How do you bring that into a modern world, the ancient cursed werewolf story? Yeah. So that one really does it for me. Fright Night again. I would say Fright Night again. It would definitely be one of the greats.
Were you a fan of the second one with the sister?
I was a fan of what they were trying to do with it. I could see what they wanted to do with it, but and knowing the backstory that they weren't getting what they needed from the company, the production company that was making it, felt bad for them, because I know it could have been a great movie. The premise of the sister coming back and getting revenge, I could see where they could have gone with it. I did like it better than they made a second one off the remake. And that one was just like, oh, you're just trying to get money out of it now.
Yeah, pretty much.
But those are definitely would be up there.
Well, not even just. Oh yeah, I was gonna say not even like the vampire transformation, but like the ghoul that starts melting in
Oh my
Bright
God.
Night. Yeah.
Yes. And it was so cool how they did that. And
Yeah.
I've seen the behind the scenes, and I had the guy who was the character talk about it. And it's just
Oh,
like,
that's
wow,
cool.
that is awesome, man. That's one of the cons I did. I think it was also in Texas. I did a lot of cons in Texas. In Texas, there was one where it had the entire cast and also Tom Holland. And
Cool.
man, it was just so neat to see them all. I mean, Roddy had passed away already, but everybody else was there. It was just super cool. Like, wow. And I had met some of them before, and it was just like, now I get to just sit and see all of them, you know. And Tom is a very nice guy. He's like introduced me to everybody after the fact. And it's like, wow, this is great. This is great. I love this. This is why I do what I do.
Yeah, right.
That's awesome.
So, but yeah, it's just that those are probably be my tops. And then there's other ones too. Like there's Toby Hooper's Life Force.
Okay. Yeah.
That's one of the ones that really just blow my
out.
mind to this day. I love that one. Only because I think when I was a kid, it was so great to have a character walk naked through the entire movie and look
Right.
that good. I mean, wait, she's a vampire? I'd be in such trouble. I would be. I wouldn't survive that. I know.
It's a great movie, people. It's not like the vampire like blood, but like life energy. You know, very
Right,
good
right.
concept.
It's literally she's sucking life force out of everybody. It was based on a book called Space Vampires, I believe, and that was a great movie because the special effects were awesome.
Gary.
Yeah, yes, it really is. Yeah, it really was. Yeah, it was great. The special effects in that were awesome. The animatronics, because it was 1980. So you figure it came out in 86, I believe, or 85, and it took about at least a year to make that. So you figure 84, 80, 85 maybe. That's great special effects for that era. And it was so cool the way they just like would suck the life right out of you. It just left you an emaciated corpse laying there that would come back and try to steal more life. I mean, oh my God, that is horrific. That is a virus.
I'm gonna check this one out. Holy man!
Oh, it's a great movie.
It's a great movie. It's a lot of fun. It's all around Halley's Comet because it was the same year that Halley's Comet came out. So it's all surrounded by the overall theme is what's in this comet. It's evil. But that's another great
that's why with my horror comic I like to add a Halley's Comet because there's so many 80s horror movies that had to do with that. So
oh God, it was such an iconic thing because they knew we're not 75 years. How many of us are going to be here to see it? And are we going to really care at that point?
Right.
You know, so it's kind of neat to see that. You know, it dates the era. Like, oh, Halley's Comet. Oh, this is definitely 80s. You know, this is
like Night of the Comet.
That's another great one. I love that. I'm friends with Kelly Maroney.
Oh, really? That's cool.
She's super cool. She had lost the cheerleader costume, and it got stolen from her place one day. It sucked. Went up on an auction. That was found on an auction, and she had no rights to it. I mean, how are you going to prove it's yours, right? But this is the iconic outfit that she wore.
Yeah.
So she tried to win it back through this auction, and I helped her do it because I made a pinup of her. She's another one of my favorites. I got to admit, she's really super cool. I've done a couple of her, but I did a pinup of her in the costume with the chopping mall robot behind her.
Oh, nice.
The zombie cop from Night of the Comet, his head laying on the ground. All kinds of things happening in this picture, and her with an Uzi because Daddy would have gave us Uzis. And sure enough, she was able to get the costume back. So now she's the proud owner of that costume again.
Nice.
And so it was really super cool. It was really super cool.
You see that, Jason?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is like when John C. Reilly and Will Ferrell found out they had more in common than they did.
Right.
No, man. Yeah, that's another great one. I love that one too. Night of the Comet. There was a lot of classics, man. Growing up, I mean, like I said, that's all I had was movies. I didn't have other kids around me, so it was
with
it was all
80s.
horror.
like action and horror,
Yeah.
and so many like B horror
my
movies that came out
I
were
grew up
so great.
I grew up on so many movies I should have watched. I should have been allowed to watch, and I probably wouldn't have been allowed to watch if Mom knew what was going on. But
Right.
I
And then you had
secretly watched.
Full Moon with the whole Puppet Master series, and then
Yes.
all that. Yeah,
Oh my God! Then Puppet Master meets demonic dolls, and and it's like
yeah.
they did so many great stuff. Trancers, I loved Trancers when I was a kid.
Hmm.
For some reason, that movie with how they got what's her name, Helen Hunt for that early Helen Hunt. It was awesome.
Gary has a question.
How do I pitch my?
Oh, Blondie pinup, yes.
Is your girlfriend going to approve of that? No.
Yes, any of my pinups that you see on Facebook, feel free to DM me, and we can talk about how I can get it to you. We will work it out.
Nice.
I'm glad you like that. It's a recent one. I got about Blondie was one of my early loves. When I was a kid, they used to play those Time Life commercials, and it was like the cool what's cool in modern rock, right? And every time Blondie came on, man, I was in love. Debbie Harry did it for me, man, and so I have about maybe 3 or 4 pinups of her, and one of Leather Tuscadero. I'll never forget her. She was awesome. It goes back to Happy Days.
So
I
now,
liked her.
oh, go ahead.
No, I liked her over her sister Pinky any day. I'm just saying.
Yeah. And so now the next question I'm going to ask is that, as kids at a playground, especially if you grew up in the 80s and 90s, we would fight who would be what superhero would kick whose ass. Like,
Right.
Thor would kick the crap out of Hulk.
Right.
And now the same type of question, who is your favorite 80s horror slasher and why?
I always loved Jason. I don't know what it is. I've always, maybe because I was always the tallest kid in school. And I always felt kind of freakish by it. So I think, and I wasn't bald then like I am now, but back then it was like I was just this tall kid and always the tallest. And I've always felt kind of freakish about it. And I always related to him more. Because I was quiet in school. I was the wallflower of sorts. Yeah. So I always liked Jason. And I always thought that Jason could probably kick anybody's ass, except maybe Freddy, but then again, Freddy, it's again, we saw that Freddy versus Jason, and it's like, how do you even win when both of you can't die? How do you beat the other guy?
Yeah, and then that
Didn't you
has
think
a question
Jason Voorhees was also the one who would be most likely to befriend like a little kid and become rehabilitated? He
had kind of a Frankenstein feel to him. Like he was just traumatized beyond belief, and maybe there was a way to bring him back to normality, but then his face rotted, and how do you make that normal?
It wouldn't be for me. It wouldn't be for me to save him.
I can only accept that. Right, I can only imagine. He can't smell good. That's a lot of rot.
No,
that's a lot of rot. You gotta
rot. Other people's like bitty chunks and all
and
that stuff.
Yeah.
Not
and
washing
it's fun
his hands
because depending on
you don't want to wear more than just a mask on your face.
Yeah, exactly. And like with Jason, he didn't start off with the hockey mask,
right?
Right. And he was even like a zombie at first. He was just ugly, pretty much an ugly ginger because he had red hair under. I'm a ginger. I can say that.
He was not. He didn't even know he couldn't die. I mean, he wasn't even in the first one, except till the very end, and then he was this rotting little kid. Ari did a great job. The guy who played that when he was a little kid, Ari is his name, and he actually has a band. He's in a band now called First Jason because he was the first Jason. So that's super cool. Yeah, but that's just it. I mean, in the second movie, he was alive. He's like a human, just kind of like almost like sloth. Almost, he's a little deformed, a little bit, not quite right, but still human looking. And then he really went all out. Little by little, gotten worse and worse. Man, I tell you, Tommy put a few notches in his belt in that one. Ooh.
Oh yeah.
His arch enemy there for a minute.
And, Jason's such a big character. That's why he was the first one to get I play with my nephews once in a while. The Friday the 13th video game on Xbox.
Oh man,
really fun.
I wanted. I don't have Xbox, but I loved when I was a kid. There was one summer in particular where every night I played Friday the 13th on my Nintendo.
Oh man,
it was the
that
best.
and the Nightmare on Elm Street was hard, and I never beat those two.
Oh my! There's no beating it. There's no beating it. It's just like.
And then I wonder why do they have these games for kids to play? But then it was the 80s. It was the 80s.
I'm going to say to torture kids. You'll never win. It's the game of life. You're never going to win.
Yeah. If you were a poor kid, you didn't have a Nintendo Power.
I honestly think when they made video games, especially the early ones like, say, for example, Pac-Man, it got harder every level. They were just trying to teach you about life until you eventually died. That was basically the game.
Get that quarter at all costs, the quickest way possible.
Exactly. And that's
how we did it. Literally, I have one of those systems that could play old school Nintendo and Super Nintendos.
Nice.
And one of my favorite games of all time is Paperboy 2.
Right.
Yeah, just video games.
I was terrible at them, but I still love playing those, especially back in the day, because when I was a kid, I didn't know I was terrible. I just thought this is how you play video games. No one was around. So like I said, there was no other kids around me, so I didn't feel bad about playing terribly at them. I suck at these.
Yeah.
But that was one of my favorites to play. Was Friday the 13th, and I played that. Like I said, one hot summer, man. I was sitting there in the dark in my den, playing that game over and over, and just trying to beat Jason. Never quite beating him, flinging machetes at me. Never could do it, but man, those were good days.
Yeah, the video game is fun. I like playing Jason more than the counselors.
Yeah,
of course, there's different ways that you could escape, but it's just so fun playing as Jason because you have different skins. So you have Jason with the machete, or you have Jason with the giant spear. So each Jason with each weapon has a different kill. And then you have the environmental kills. So it's I remember that kill from this movie and that movie,
I don't know what it is. I just felt always closer to Jason than any other. Michael Myers, Leatherface. I love Leatherface. That's a great story. I know a lot of it is based off of, the idea of Ed Gein. And I get that, but it's still a great, fun story that a whole family of killers are like that, and you guys, here's a little trivia you guys may or may not know. Do you know who does the opening narration at the beginning of Texas Chainsaw Massacre? Do you know who that is?
No. Oh my God. I know who it is. I just can't remember the name on the top of my head.
The opening narration was done by John Larroquette.
No way.
Dan from Night Court.
From Night Court. That's what I was gonna say. Dan from Night Court.
Yeah, because if you hear it, it's
him. It's his voice. And he says it was right after he had finally learned how to lose his Louisiana twang. So it was wow. He says it's one of my pride and joys right there, because you couldn't hear my twang at all. My accent was not there.
That's funny.
But yeah, every time I hear it now, I'm like, Dan from Night Court, isn't that something?
Right.
Yeah. That's crazy.
But that's awesome, because in the 80s,
that guy would have had
you had most actors
if he was a lawyer now.
Right?
Can you imagine
lawsuits a month? Exactly.
Can you imagine? Seriously, every one of them would be sexual harassment. I mean, what's her name? Christine would be suing him every day.
Every day. He'd be in jail. The show would have been him getting arrested, different ways that he got arrested.
I wonder what they're going to do, because they're bringing back that show.
Oh man, I don't know what they're going to do without the show.
Bringing back Night Court.
Yeah,
they're right. I mean, how are you going to have Dan without, being Dan, right?
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be, I guess, it's Harry's daughter, who now is in charge of Night Court. She's a criminal judge. And Dan
that would be cool.
Yeah, I think it will be. I mean, it'll be a whole different cast, because half of the cast is already passed on, but
Yeah.
and you've lost like a lot of the main ones. Harry died, and so, but it would be interesting to see what they're going to do with that.
Yeah.
She's headlining the whole thing because she's a huge Night Court fan. So it's
that's a great show.
Harry made Night Court one of my first live action shows that I enjoyed as a kid, because you never knew when he was going to do a magic trick.
Right.
Like, and so it made it worth it to watch. And then you just liked the show before too long. It was so
and
good.
It's great. And it's great that you found out that what he was doing before he became an actor.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. He was really good at the whole, I mean, I saw like he did stand up on HBO, like his own stand up routine on HBO. And it was like, wow, this is like the guy from Night Court. It's so cool.
Yeah.
I thought he was cool because he was doing magic and comedy. I thought it was hilarious. And then he was on Cheers. He did the same thing. That was just his thing. And it's like, wow, you turned it into a whole lifestyle with Night Court.
Yeah.
9 years, man. That's awesome. That's one of my favorite shows as a kid too.
Oh yeah.
I love it.
Just a good show
So
overall.
now with one question.
Sure.
With you being a horror artist and you're creating gore, blood, and everything, but is there a place where you're like, okay, I'm not going to go that far?
Honestly, I don't think there is.
Okay.
I honestly don't think there is. I've had to play like a lot of what do I do or how would I do this? I would handle things more delicately than other things, because in this latest book I'm working on, I mean, it's set in the dystopian future, and there is no education anymore. Education's pretty much faltered. It's failed. It's completely failed. And in a modern day kid of that era, learning about the history of the world, the history of her country, because she's a refugee from America.
Gotcha.
America becomes this third world country by the time she's a child, and she grows up on the streets of London. And to learn what happened because she doesn't even know what happened to her homeland, and her parents are dead. They died long ago. So she grew up on the streets by herself. She is now getting an education from this omnipotent God, Inanna. Inanna's there just laying it out. So I go through, everything that's happened in the early part of
See, Gary.
Take care, Gary. Thanks for hanging out, man.
Thank you, bud. Thanks for everything. So that's the thing. It's kind of that whole, it's touchy. It's touchy because it's so fresh.
Okay. Gotcha.
It's real.
It's real. It's real. And that's, it's something that I would probably handle with kid gloves, or at least I handled it with kid gloves. But also was real about it,
It's a very honest story to tell.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very honest
But it's
story.
necessary. It's not like, how some people just like want to go with like full on torture porn.
Right.
Just
right.
because
no, I think that's where I would draw the line. Just for the sake of blood and guts, torture porn, just for the sake of blood, gut, torture porn. That's not my thing. It seems futile. There's got to be a reason for the story.
Absolutely.
Now, to have a character tortured is one thing, but to have them, the whole torture porn aspect of it, just for visual stunningness,
right?
I think that's where I draw the line. It has to be a reason for it. There has to be a reason for it. If there's no reason for it, I wouldn't put it in my story.
Yep.
So that's probably my limit. I wouldn't do torture porn, hostile,
Yeah.
Human Centipede.
Human Centipede. I'm going to pass on that one. Yeah. I saw it, but I'm like, Once.
And then they made 3 of them. I don't know why.
Yeah, they made 3 of them. I'm like, oh God, that is horrific. And that it just proves people will watch anything. So
what is up with that?
Oh man,
I'm trying to get better about saying what's wrong with people, because that doesn't sound right all the time either. But like, I remember going to the movies and watching the first Hostel and saying like, I'm so far beyond grossed out now. Like, I just want it to be over.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's horrific, and I get it. I get it. It's supposed to be horrific. It's supposed to be nightmarish. What if this really is a thing out there? What if there's this group? But it's just not my thing. I just,
But 80s horror didn't have to go that far. They
no,
had a great story, great character. They had
right,
great kills, but they didn't have to go that far. I think
right, right. And
they're just trying to go. They're just trying to add too much.
it's for the sake. Yeah, exactly. You're trying to one up on this, and it's just for the sake of the gore. And I'm just not just for the sake of gore. It gets really old really quick. It's a one-trick pony. Great,
Yeah,
you can show
absolutely.
that person's head getting smashed with a sledgehammer, but okay, or maybe do it 4 or 5 times where it's really slow, but
Yeah, but now
make
what?
it like artistic, But
now
I just,
what and why?
yeah, it's just not my thing. It's not. There's no real purpose for it. And if there's an overall story or reason why, okay, but just if it becomes gratuitous, it's just not for me.
Yeah.
Not for me. I mean, the one that really kind of got me was Midnight Meat Train.
Yeah.
Which had eventually the story. At first, when I was watching, I'm like, it's just going to be gross for the sake of gross, and we're just going to knock out a person's eye with a fucking meat slice, just because we can. But then there was an overall story. I'm like, okay, and it's a messed up story. It's a really dark, messed up story, and I'm like, okay. I mean, I get it, but it's really the level that I would probably stop it at. I wouldn't.
I'm not going to watch anything else, but
yeah. So I don't know. That's kind of my level. I don't watch. I don't really dig gore for just the sake of showing gore. There has to be a story to it. Otherwise, it's kind of boring to me, honestly.
Yeah.
It's just boring. So I mean, I need to be entertained, not just grossed out. Especially because I've seen so much behind the scenes stuff, and it's like, oh, they did that. So it's not, none of it. I don't get so sucked in. It's real for me. I'm watching this and I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
I totally get it.
Not doing it for me. So yeah, but that's probably my limit.
Gotcha, man. Well, we're at an hour and 27.
Oh, geez.
Oh, wow. Man.
Time flies when you're having fun, guys.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's always great. It's always great. Thank you for coming on. Definitely have to have you on in the future.
Hey, absolutely. I'm here anytime you need me, guys. This is great. You guys are awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
That's really awesome to say. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Like I said, we're going to have drinks over horror stories about Jehovah's Witnesses, man. I'm telling you.
Hey, man, I'm ready, man. That's a conversation that stinks, but I can have fun with those conversations. Anytime.
Fantastic. Guys, thanks so much for having me on. Seriously.
No problem.
Much appreciated.
Thank you, Bill, Gary, Jim, especially Jim. Thank you for introducing us to Pierre and Geo. That's really awesome.
Yeah, thank you for introducing me, Jim. Seriously, these guys, because they're killer. Appreciate it.
All right, we appreciate it.
All right. We'll see y'all next. Well, actually, we'll see y'all tomorrow because we have a guy who's trying to promote his Kickstarter, and I think next week is his Kickstarter, so he wants to come on in advance. So definitely going to do that. So I think it's 7 p.m. tomorrow.
And tomorrow counts. Yeah, tomorrow counts because we're trying to get to 100 episodes. Like that's the next one. So we're doing a double feature this week. So here we go.
Awesome.
Very cool. Before I forget, guys, brawngraphics.com. Check it out.
Brawn Graphics.
BRAWNGRAPHIX.com. And you'll see all my pinup work. You'll just Google me. You'll find all kinds of stuff on me.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, we got to get.
You guys have to get a room next time.
Yeah.
I got a lot of his links down below.
Very cool.
Yep. Excellent. Great. Hey, we appreciate it again, Geo, man. It was a blast. Thanks for having a chat with us.
Awesome time.
We got to do it again.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
See y'all. Bye.